I am joined today by a friend, a co-author, Juliet Artman. The last few years, we've gotten to know each other through a program called the Author Conservatory. And fall of 2024, kind of when we're filming this interview, we are both being featured in a short story anthology. So we are here today to talk to Juliet about herself, her short story, and just kind of anything else that comes up. So, Juliet, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so just to kick things off, can you share a little bit about yourself, your ambitions as an author, kind of who you write for?
Yes, yeah, so I have been studying the Author Conservatory. I got to graduate this June in the first graduating class, which was really fun. I write contemporary fiction for Christian teen girls to help them keep trusting in the Lord. So specifically, I want to write for girls that already have a relationship with Christ, but life has gotten tricky and there's new things to navigate. And my hope is that when girls, especially teenagers, walk away from reading my story, that they're just encouraged to keep pressing on when things get hard, because things are going to get hard, but it's going to be okay. We're going to make it through, and we can do it with joy, and we can do it with hope for a better future. So yeah, that's who like my main audience is, but I also write to families because I love my family, and I hope that families will enjoy my story as well.
Cool. So, growing up, were there certain stories that really inspired you or impacted you, kind of becoming a lover of reading and then wanting to write eventually?
Yes, I would say Little House on the Prairie. That's one of my favorite book series. I just read it again recently, and like it holds up. Like there are some really good stories in there. I think that really inspired my love for reading, and it also really inspired my love for stories that capture a period in time that someone's lived. So like I write contemporary. Obviously, I live in a contemporary time setting. But I love the idea of like Laura lived in the 1800s, and in me writing contemporary, I get to capture just a little piece of what it's like to live in 2024 and to save it in a book forever. So I really enjoy that. I would say what inspired me to write was as I started to get a little bit older, when I was like 10 and 11, then I started to read more books by myself. Like I didn't need mom's approval to read books anymore. And as someone who um, put their faith in Christ at a very young age. Like I wanted books that where other girls were also following Christ. And I really struggled to find that. I could not find books that weren't cheesy, that had girls that just genuinely loved the Lord and just genuinely wanted to follow Him and follow in His kingdom. And especially in contemporary, I really struggled with that. And when you follow Christ, you live in a different world than someone who is just living in a worldly view and just going day to day life. So that was a big inspiration for me at a young age of like I wanted to find other stories that featured what it was like to grow up knowing Christ. And when I couldn't find that, I'm like, well, I guess I'll go write it.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I love the point that you brought up about creating like the stories you create now in a contemporary setting. Eventually, people might look back at them kind of like how we look back at like Little House on the Prairie or Anne of Green
Yes.
Gables, where it's like, oh, that's it, it's capturing like an old setting or something. Like
Yes.
maybe
I
in,
always laugh that like I write contemporary because I don't want to do the research of historical fiction, even though I love historical fiction. So I'll just write contemporary, and one day it'll be historical fiction.
right, people in their space cars will be like looking back and being like,
Yes.
they didn't have like space cars and teleporters. Clearly, I
Yes.
read and spend a lot of time in like science fiction and fantasy here. So, for this short story anthology, you are one of the, I think, 12 authors we have in this. Can you share anything about your short story, like your title, like a little brief snippet on what's it about?
Yes. So my short story is called Details in the Buttercream, which is a very sweet story with lots of cake and lots of frosting. So Vanessa has studied under her aunt on how to make cake for many years. And her aunt is now moving away. So Vanessa is left in charge of all things cake at her dad's bakery. And what do you do when everything starts to fall apart? Just a little bit. How do you keep going when you are faced with failure?
Cool, cool. So is that does that come from a spot? Have you worked in a bakery or had situations like that where you were kind of mentored by someone and then had to take on responsibility for yourself?
Yes, I have never worked in a bakery. I really love baking, but household baking and like baking in a bakery is different. So always get people to read your stories who have actually done what you're trying to
Right.
do. um, I would say a lot of the mentorship and like the aspect of turning to people when things do feel like they're falling apart. I would say that is a large part of my journey through author is finding safe people that truly genuinely care about you but are also willing to say it's a like this is not as bad as you think, which is a lot of what Vanessa struggles with is like she thinks that things are falling apart and they are like there is literally things that are not working, but you also need to find people in your life that can say it's okay, you can do this, like keep going anyways, it's not going to be this hard forever. So I have definitely found that in my time in author and just yeah people encouraging me that like you can do hard things and it's all going to work out okay in the end.
Cool. Who is your story? I guess, like, do you have an age range it's geared towards? I know you talked about younger girls, so it's kind of like YA Christian contemporary fiction.
Yeah, I would say my story is written for it's written for a broad range of girls. So Vanessa is 19 years old in the story, but I we always read up, especially when you're younger, you like to read about
Yeah,
people that are older than you. So I would say like 14 and 15-year-olds could enjoy my story. And because it's written for families, like girls younger than that could enjoy it as well.
yeah,
But they might not grasp some of the life lessons that Vanessa has learned just because they're I mean, she's stepping into adulthood, she's stepping into
right.
a career.
But that could also be like inspiring for even younger readers, I could see, where just seeing a role model in fiction of someone
Yeah.
stepping in, taking responsibility, and maybe they can't start a business right now because they're like 7 or 8,
Mhm.
but maybe they could be like, oh, maybe I can like do my chores more independently or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, last question, since it takes place in a bakery and cake is a main theme, if someone like so I've read all the stories in the anthology, um, and yours has such a strong connection to like a type of food. So if
Yeah.
someone were to read this and want to kind of immerse themselves more by having a piece of cake while they read it, what flavor of cake would you recommend someone eat while they read your story?
Yes. Well, if you pre-order a copy of my book, I have a recipe card that's coming. But definitely chocolate cake. Chocolate cake is my favorite, and it is totally just like she works with chocolate cake the whole time. So I was extremely hungry for cake while writing the story. It was a
Oh
real
man.
problem. Like I made cupcakes so many times.
Oh man. But you can count it as research.
It's true. Yeah, I needed to
There.
taste
I
it,
mean,
make sure it tasted okay.
that's my backup plan in life is to just like specifically write books so I can like take a vacation and write it off as like a
Yes.
tax write off or something like that. So there's a sneak peek behind the curtain of like what us authors do kind of selfishly. Well, Juliet, thank you so much for stopping by today, sharing about yourself as writer, your heart behind writing, and about your short story here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.